When the Tony nominations were announced honoring the best of Broadway theater, the musical Parade scored big, garnering 6 nominations, including Best Revival of a Musical, Best Actor for Ben Platt, and Best Actress for Michaela Diamond. But Parade, which was originally produced in 1998, is no musical comedy. Its subject is the story of Leo Frank, the Jewish manager of a factory in Atlanta, Georgia, who in 1913 was arrested and charged for the murder of 13-year-old Mary Fagan. Frank was convicted despite a case against him full of holes, and the Georgia governor, Frank Slayton, commuted his death penalty to life imprisonment. But an anti-Semitic mob grabbed him from jail and lynched him, the only American Jew known to have suffered that fate. Parade tells the story of Leo Frank through music, and the timeliness of its revival was proven when a crowd of neo-Nazi demonstrators protested outside its Broadway theater during previews in February. And the White House featured performances for Parade at its event, which we mentioned earlier, to mark American Jewish Heritage Month. Well, joining us for more is Thomas Doherty, professor of American Studies at Brandeis University, and speaking to us from Massachusetts. And Professor Doherty, we're talking about one case of a Jewish lynching compared to hundreds, if not thousands, of the African-American lynchings in the American South. But why does this case have such a hold still on the American imagination?
Well, the case is kind of like a perfect storm of 4 great American themes: class, region, race, and religion. And they all kind of come together in the Leo Frank case of 1913, 1915. And the case has never really left the forefront of the American imagination. Scholarship, books, major motion pictures, television shows have all dramatized this, and the Broadway play Parade is maybe just the most recent iteration of this case that's haunted the American imagination. It's an extraordinarily influential case. 2 initials that have been perennial throughout 20th and now 21st century American culture came out of this case. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League of the B'nai B'rith, was founded in large measure to oppose the outbreak of anti-Semitism that was seen in the Leo Frank case. And then the other initials that come out of the case, not so progressive or optimistic, of course, was KKK, that the mob that lynched Leo Frank. And when you say mob, we often think of sort of a bunch of drunken, deracinated hillbillies who are spontaneously descending on a courthouse with torches. This was more like a planned vigilante military operation that included the pillars of the local communities, sheriffs, district attorneys, local businessmen who came into the state prison. This wasn't like a little court in the center of town, but it was actually the state prison in Milledgeville, Georgia, where Frank had been taken to serve out his time after Governor Slayton commuted his sentence. And of course, the warden and the guards were totally in on it. And the vigilantes come in that night in August of 1915, drive him from Milledgeville to Marietta, Georgia, which was Mary Fagan's hometown. Mary Fagan was the 13-year-old girl that Frank allegedly had murdered, and lynched him. Frank was, by all accounts, heroic and dignified, and his final remarks were so moving that even some people in the lynch mob thought that maybe they should, not lynch him that day, but everybody had gone to so much trouble with getting the crowd together on the road, they lynched him anyway. So it's really this perennially powerful case in the American imagination because of, I think, those cluster of reasons. And as you noted in your introductory comments, one of the reasons, frankly, we're interested in it, it's an anomaly because estimates of 10 to 15,000 African Americans have been lynched in the Deep South in the Reconstruction period and beyond. So it wouldn't have been unusual at all for an African American to be lynched, but for a middle-class Jewish guy to be lynched in the South, because it's an anomaly, is another reason that we pay attention to this case, because we ask ourselves, why was Leo Frank lynched when, and not to be grim about this, when there was a perfectly logical African-American candidate who, in all likelihood, did commit the crime? the janitor of the pencil factory, a guy named Jim Conley.
Right. Now, there was a movie made in the 30s, They Won't Forget, based on the case, but they didn't even mention the Jewishness of the deal with it in the subject. But Parade deals very explicitly with it, and talk about the timeliness of that Broadway show being revived now.
Oh, yeah. As you noted, there were neo-Nazis at the opening in February. Presumably, they were angry because they couldn't be there at the original lynching. And there's been a nascent wave of anti-Semitism in America, coming not just from the political right, which had been his sort of historical basis, but also from people who fancy themselves on the political left. The boycott, divest, and sanction movement is very much alive on American university campuses. So the fact that this play is being produced on Broadway, initially off Broadway, and it is now a real, I think, a statement. And the crowds have really responded. The showing I was at had really an ecstatic response from everybody in the crowd. As you noted, it's been nominated for a lot of Tonys. Ben Platt, the lead actor, is incredibly moving. He's on stage the entire evening. As you might have heard, one of the innovations of the play is that during intermission, Platt is on stage for the entire intermission. He sits at a desk, and he's there sort of testifying silently to the solitude of the imprisonment of Leo Frank, while the rest of us are getting drinks and moving around.
Right. Just briefly, Professor, there have been efforts to clear the name. As you said, there was a much more logical suspect. The case against Leo Frank, full of holes. Where stands the efforts to officially clear him of the murder of Mary Fagan?
Oh, the state of Georgia officially cleared him of the charges some time ago. I don't think many historians have any real doubt that he was railroaded of the crime, and the preponderance of evidence does say that he was innocent and Jim Conley was the actual perpetrator. One thing about the play that I kind of didn't like, and maybe this is looking at it from maybe too much of an historian's point of view and not performance and music, was to me it kind of diminished the role of the real profile and courage in this case. If there's any encouragement that comes out of this terrible incident, it's the profile and courage of the governor, John Slayton, who looked at the case in 1915, and he could have handed it off to his successor, but he really did the noble thing and looked at the case, agreed that Frank was probably innocent, and decided to commute the sentence, thinking that when people got calmer, there'd be an occasion to pardon him totally, so that he could get a fair pardon out of all of this. And when he commuted the sentence, he really put his life at risk. Mobs descended on his house. His political career in Georgia was over, and and Slayton was really stood up. Right. And I think his is a name that might be remembered in the case as well.
All right. Well, I think we'll have to leave it there. Professor Thomas Doherty of Brandeis University, thank you for joining us on Jewish World Weekly.
A pleasure, sir.